If you clicked on this video, you probably recognized every melody that I just played, and yet somehow I feel that there's a sort of taboo around listening to video game music outside of the context of a game. Is there something inherently different about a body of music because it was made with a game in mind? Should game composers be heralded the same way that regular composers are? When the hell are we gonna give Shoji Meguro a paperweight to celebrate how dang good everything he ever made is? I've been obsessed with music for as long as I can remember. It's an obsession that's followed me around my whole life and basically infected everything that I do. All this to say, I might only like games with good or at least memorable soundtracks. Mega Man X primed me for my taste in hard rock and metal. Donkey Kong Country is probably why any song with good percussion can make me move. And Zelda... It's Zelda, it speaks for itself. It might seem odd to draw the association between these chiptune soundtracks and their more traditional counterparts, but the spirit of that music has always been there, regardless of the tools used to compose it. This concept has troubled me for some time, as I think that far too often, video game composers go unnoticed. It's not like composing music is any less difficult when it's being composed for the context of a game, it's most likely much harder. So why aren't they in the conversation when we're talking about great musicians? If you check the Grammy categories, there is one that includes video game soundtracks, specifically the Music for Visual Media Award. However, further research shows that none of these awards have ever gone to a video game composer or soundtrack. Actually, all of the awards have gone to composers who've scored films for television shows or movies. So what gives? How is it that over 40 years of games hasn't netted a single Grammy? Of course, gaming has only really worked its way into the greater sphere of media, and even more recently becoming the most popular and profitable form of entertainment. That being said, the first fully orchestrated video game soundtrack dates all the way back to 2000, in the form of Hitman. The first Hitman. The first Hitman? Names are dumb. I theorize that there's 3 reasons why no video game soundtrack has ever won a Grammy. I mentioned earlier that the first fully orchestrated soundtrack for a game was being composed over 20 years ago. It's definitely too long a stretch of time to go without winning something, but overall, it's not that long in the grand scheme of the Grammys, that date all the way back to 1959. For a very long time, games weren't really respected as an artistic medium. They were viewed as more complex toys or pacifiers for your children, the hottest gift this holiday season, whatever. More than likely, this perception prevented any meaningful exploration of the sounds offered within each game. Almost all soundtracks for the first few generations of game had to be composed with the limitation of the sound chips used by early consoles. This prevented games from having the bombastic soundtracks that the movies and TV shows of their time boasted. To ears accustomed to more traditional music, chiptune soundtracks might not even sound like music. It's something that all new genres and timbres suffered through. Jazz wasn't accepted as a form of music to the old heads of the jazz era, rock and roll the same, rap the same, etc. For the sake of being fair and balanced, I'm going to give early naysayers the benefit of the doubt. Early consoles like the NES and SNES didn't boast the most robust chipsets. I mean, they had to work under some serious constraints just to get any sound out at all, and to be frank, not everyone handled it well. It was difficult to craft these tones that would stick in the minds of listeners. I also think that gameplay had to be the focal point during this initiation into the public consciousness, leading to a decreased focus on the sonic elements. However, some talented teams of these eras understood something paramount about video games. Creating a multimedia experience requires close attention to all of the medias, including music. Oh my god. Do you hear this? It's like having your eardrums lightly tapped by angels. These tunes are sticky. You probably recognize most of them from the first note. That is not an easy thing to accomplish for a songwriter or producer, but Koji Kondo navigated around the shortcomings of early sound chips like a dang obstacle course. He made that card his little baby and cared for it. Tracks like the overworld theme from Super Mario Bros. Are hard-coded in most of us at this point in history. The first 3 notes are instantly recognizable. The 3 snare hits that follow lead you into the main melody, and the bass line follows the lead, note for note, just before the switch up after 8 measures. Then they diverge into their own unique patterns for the next 8 measures. A very enjoyable blending of hypnotic simplicity and then a gradual progression into a more complex melody. Then, the bridge, where the drums sort of move to the foreground and the melody gets a little bit more serious. It adds a little bite to the song as a whole, a subtle reminder to the player that you aren't free from danger. The song then loops back into the first 8 bars, just to switch it up again to an alternative melody, before looping back into itself again, and again, and again, and again, and again. But it doesn't feel like it's happening again and again. Somehow, Koji Kondo managed to compose a song that doesn't get annoying despite it looping until you complete World 1-1, no matter how long it takes. Of course, art is subjective, and this point can be debated, but that's a massive accomplishment if you ask me. To tie this back to the point at hand, I understand why the soundtrack to Super Mario Bros. Didn't win a Grammy. Video games were still largely viewed as toys rather than an artistic medium, as I said before, and despite how unbelievably well made and catchy all of these tunes in Mario are, they still sort of boil down to a collection of loops rather than a full, robust, fleshed out, structured body of songs. That being said, there are most certainly soundtracks being composed for modern games that have captured that magical, doesn't get annoying energy. I mean, you can't mention
You'll never see it come back. You said that my mind is too fast for right.
the beasts that are Atlas Games' RPGs are filled to the brim with endlessly catchy songs composed by my personal fave, Shoji Meguro. All of them from at least the PS2 era onward have utilized full bands. For those who don't know, Persona 5 and Persona 5 Royal are the latest offerings from Atlas in the larger Shin Megami Tensei franchise, sort of. Combined, these games as of November 2020 have sold 4.6 million units, the most the franchise has seen to date. My point in saying all of this is, a lot of people have heard these songs, and all the people who've heard these songs have heard these songs a lot, because the story alone will take north of 97 hours to beat, according to howlongtobeat.com. 97 hours of never seeing it coming sounds like it would be bad for your heart, but based on the number of people attending this concert, I'd argue it's quite good for your heart. Fans seem to love Persona for its music as much as they love it for its addictive combat and slick presentation, and waifus. Persona 4 came with a compact disc containing its soundtrack, so I'd argue that Atlas is most certainly aware of this fact. But do you know who seems to be quite oblivious to this fact? You guessed it, the Grammy Committee. Despite Persona 5 Stellar Sonics, as well as the likes of Super Mario Galaxy, Dark Souls, Doom Eternal, no soundtrack can seem to snatch this allegedly prestigious award. I mean, look at the number of people on that stage. Holy shit, I cannot imagine trying to organize that many people to even show up somewhere, let alone play songs we can't get enough of, even after 97 hours. All of them represent a necessary component of the timbral palette and aesthetics of one video game franchise. One. I just have a hard time understanding how we've gone so long without celebrating the accolades and accomplishments of this subsect of music outside of the video game bubble, if you will. Fans certainly haven't ignored it, so why have the tastemakers? Even after video games have finally shed their baby teeth as a medium and established a bite that's growing larger than any other, what gives? Attention. Attention is what gives.
Friend.
Games are fucking complicated, dude. There's a lot that goes into making them. Sometimes thousands of people are required just to get them out the door, and even then, there's no guarantee that they'll be any good. There are anomalies, of course, like the quite excellent Stardew Valley that was entirely made and composed by Concerned Ape, aka Eric Barone, or the legendary Undertale. But in general, they are the combined efforts of many individuals, especially in the AAA tier of games. There are several bricklayers building this proverbial house, and because of that, it can take a massive amount of time just to list everyone building. To broaden the scope of what I'm talking about a little, take a moment to think about how many different elements every game contains. You must consider the art direction, how the controls feel, how rewarding the gameplay systems are, pacing, the list goes on. It's only natural that sometimes music gets lost in the shuffle, and that's okay. Every game is unique, therefore the focus of each game is case dependent. Let's use Dark Souls as an example. Here's some of the soundtrack from Dark Souls, composed by Motoi Sakuraba. The swelling strings of Firelink Shrine sound like home, but a home that you return to reluctantly. Safe, but uncomfortable. The sonic assault that is Ornstein and Smo berating you with crashing cymbals in a blasting brass section, and below it all, those baritone boys. The song stirs up some unpleasant emotions in me since this boss sucks. And the plin plin plans. Oh, the plin plin plans of Gwyn, Lord of Cinder. A lone piano soaked in reverb. One hand playing the creeping chord progressions to drive the finality of it all. And the right growing more and more desperate, climbing up the scale, all while a mighty lord is fighting not only you, but is foreseeable. inevitable demise. For comparison, here's what Dark Souls sounds like most of the time. It's kind of just silence outside of your footsteps, enemies, and some parts of the environment. Not exactly memorable. The silence, however, is a necessity for the feel of the game. The overall mood throughout the game is foreboding and lonely, and the contemplative silence really helps cement that. Not only that, but since most of the game has no music, when you do hear music, you immediately know something of note is happening. By necessity, the soundtrack takes a backseat to gameplay, much to the game's benefit, I might add. Although this caused it to go somewhat overlooked. It's a part of the foundation, a brick if you will. However, despite the structural integrity of the walls of Dark Souls, all in all, the music just tends to be another... okay, this essay is about the Grammys. So what's the point of all of this? Well, I think what prevents the video game composers from getting their proper recognition stems from this need that people seem to have to associate success with one individual. We need a figurehead, a frontman, a leader, an idol, an icon, whatever. Due to the inherent complexity of games, the credit for their success can rarely be traced back to one individual, no matter how many times you see Hideo Kojima's name. What is a Grammy committee with designer blinders on to do? Read the credits? Or worse yet, actually play a game? It's hard to generate excitement over celebrating an individual's accomplishments when within game development, people tend to be content as a cell in the organism of their respective studios. Happy to be a part of the foundation that supports the creation of the multimedia experiences we all love. And that leads us to... criticizing the Grammys is a tried and true YouTube tradition, and one that I'll be contributing to now. Yes, I know, you're welcome. I know we needed more. But how can you not criticize them? In fairness, to try to justly assess all of the music that's been released within a year's time is an arduous task, to put it lightly. It just can't be done in any real capacity. There's limitations by default, which is fine. The era of digital media has fertilized the land for creators who would have never had an option to plant in the past, leading to exponential growth. And that's on all fronts: TV, movies, games, YouTube monologuing. So yeah, some stuff is gonna get left out. There's also the issue of categories in and of themselves, and how difficult it really is to categorize music. As the art form progresses, new minds that have been influenced by a variety of sources will merge ideas together that we never thought possible, birthing new genres and musical stylings en masse. It's hard to deny that this can lead to some difficulty in trying to define bodies of music, for any of us really.
However,
the Grammys are profoundly bad at both looking outside the constraints of the mainstream and categorization. They've been found time and time again snubbing artists who clearly should have won, or very deliberately overinflating the importance of a certain artist's body of work. I find this inexcusable, considering the fact that the organization has been around since 1959, and I would assume receiving criticism of the way that it handles things since 1959. This trouble they seem to have with miscategorization goes beyond mislabeling right up into prejudice. The use of the words world and urban have often been categorized as being coded language. This trouble continues even into 2020 when they renamed the urban contemporary category to progressive R&B. Put as gently as possible, the change could basically be compared to changing the name from the black category to the colored category. Regardless of name, the category exists to exclude black and brown artists from the more traditional genres like pop or R&B. For the sake of keeping this video somewhat lighthearted, we won't go down that rabbit hole, and I must clarify that snubbing video game soundtracks from the one award they can win isn't genuinely damaging in the way that categories based on race are. What I would like to do is highlight a trend of exclusionary behavior and elitism. As of 2020, there's only been one game soundtrack that's been nominated: Austin Wintory's masterful scoring of Journey. Unlike Dark Souls, Journey soundtrack is absolutely a major focal point. Art direction is the primary driving force. The muted violins, the wooden textured flutes, the warm synth pads flooding the background, the lone, upright bass, mixed to sonically sit in the back corner. There's a motion to it all that subtly pushes you forward. However, it doesn't rush you. After all, the game isn't called Destination. It is an incredibly moving body of music. I truly don't believe Journey could stand as tall as it does without the legs that Mr. Wintry gave it. Unfortunately, the soundtrack lost to that of The Girl with the Dragon Tattoo that fateful year of 2012. It was composed by none other than Trent Reznor of Nine Inch Nails fame, paired with one of his best collaborators, Atticus Ross. I'm quite torn on the results of this decision, being a fan of Trent's incredible contributions to music over the past 20-something years. The Girl with the Dragon Tattoo falls right in line. It earned that award, though that's not to say that it was better than Journey. However, I had this itching feeling that this was a decision made almost entirely within the mental confines of that which is familiar. Trent was no stranger to the organization, earning his first nom all the way back in '96 for his song Hurt, later covered by none other than Johnny Cash. Nine Inch Nails has charted more than once. You probably saw The Social Network, another film Reznor scored. The Grammys finally had a chance to broaden their horizons and give respect to the now most profitable form of media. Yet they chose a safe route. Was it the correct decision? Well, obviously, that's subjective. I'm not even entirely sure how I would answer that question. However, I'm rooted in the idea that it was a safe decision, and I'm highly suspicious that there were some people looking down their nose at the idea of a game soundtrack winning this coveted award. After all, they're just children's playthings, right? They can never have the same emotional impact as that of movies or television, right? Journey is only one example of a game that was worthy of a nod. Criminally, games like Halo Combat Evolved, Mass Effect 2, and Undertale never earned nominations in their respective years of release. On a brighter note, I do believe this will change soon. You can't ignore the importance of gaming in the public consciousness at this point. Naturally, I'm sure the Grammys will need to stay relevant and with the times. Thus, these two realities should merge and lead to credit being given where it's due. Look, to be honest, awards should ultimately hold very little importance as far as deciding what you find is good. At best, they're a way for us to celebrate the accomplishments of artists who have blessed us with great expressions. And at their worst, they're a way for snobs to justify their taste, as though justifying taste is something you should do at all. Video game soundtracks can sometimes get swallowed up in the whole of the game they belong to, but I think that's what makes the great one so special. Some of these tunes are just impossible to get out of your head. Some of them can give you chills and stop you in your tracks. Some of them can bring you back to a simpler time in your own life, as well as the grand scheme of things. They're just as important as every other element of the games that they score, and deserve to be viewed in the same light as the great movie and television soundtracks that they stand beside. Soundtracks can make or break games, depending on the type of game that it is. It can be the difference between a game that you traded in for credit towards the latest release, or one that will sit on every bookshelf you'll ever own. They can amp you up or chill you out. They can signify the importance of what's happening, or the unimportance of your wandering around a game world. They can even get you to stop playing games long enough to see a live orchestra perform the songs that worm their way into your head forever. That's what I did in 2012, when a friend of mine offered me a ticket to see the Legend of Zelda Symphony of the Goddess tour. It was an incredible celebration of the songs that had inspired multiple generations of people, and a wonderful performance to boot, from the symphony put on by Jason Michael Paul Productions. I can't help but wonder if I would have ever taken as deep of an interest in music as I have had I not been graced by Koji Kondo's revered works of art. While wondering that, I also can't help but wonder what games the world's next great musician is playing, how they're influencing that musician, and how they'll incorporate it into works that they'll later bless us with. In a world where the lines between different artistic mediums continue to be blurred, I'm filled with anticipation and elation at the thought of what's to come, and I hope you are as well. Thanks for watching. Hey, thanks again for watching. Make sure you click that subscribe button, leave a like if you liked it, or a dislike if you disliked it, honestly, that's fine. You know, you're your own person. Also leave a comment below if I forgot a soundtrack that you might have wanted to see represented here, and yeah, I'm sure that we might agree. Good shit.